Hey you. Yeah, you. I have a story for you. Now you probably have a favourite story, or maybe even many favourite stories. I know I do. You'll know then that not all stories are happy. And of course, not all stories are sad. Most stories usually have a healthy amount of both these things. Some stories will start out sad and end up happy. Others will start out happy and end up sad. Chapters, scenes, periods of time, some happy, some sad. Of course, happy and sad aren't the only words we can use to describe how stories make us feel. Sometimes they can be confusing and overwhelming. They could make us feel alone, unloved, even betrayed. You see, everyone in this world is living out their own story. And sometimes we can feel as if we're not in control of ours. Sometimes this is true. The things that happen to us are out of our control. But what we can control is how we react to them. I'd like to tell you a story about a person named Sarah. Sarah was a young girl. She had two brothers, a father, and a mother. She remembers all the good stuff about being a child. Parties, rolling down hills, parks, days at the beach. She remembers going to the movie store with her father, where they'd rent her favourite films for just £1. She was very small when she discovered one of her first passions, dancing. She attended her first dance class aged only 3. Oh, she loved it. Twirling around, creative and inspired. When she looks back now, it was a joyous escape from something much darker that was happening in her young life. While she still remembered all of the happy childhood memories, her first memory was that of her brother doing things to her that she didn't understand at the time. Sarah was 3 years old when her brother started to touch her, in ways that Sarah did not want to be touched. Even though she was too young to understand what those touches meant, she knew deep down that it was wrong. She knew because she was told to be quiet. She knew because she remembers the fear. She knew because our gut instinct is more powerful than you can possibly imagine. Sarah was sexually abused by her brother until he left home. Unfortunately, there was another family member who was abusing her at the same time. This abuse took on many forms. It was sexual, it was violent, and it was mental. And Sarah stayed quiet. For 8 years, she was made to perform varied forms of sexual acts with these two family members on a regular basis. This would usually happen when she was left in their care whilst her parents were at work. Oh, how she cried and clung onto her mother's ankles, and begged her parents not to go to work, although she never let on why. And of course, Sarah's parents trusted their immediate family to look after one another. They didn't know what was really happening within their own home. Sarah kept quiet. The violence in many ways was just as distressing as the sexual abuse. She was consistently pinned down, threatened, kicked, trapped under blankets, yet she kept quiet. The mental abuse, the bullying, was again as distressing, as scary, as crushing as the physical abuse. It is also more difficult to know when mental abuse is occurring, but you need to listen to your gut instinct, your intuition. If those alarms are ringing in your mind, then you know you are not being treated properly. In Sarah's case, She was bullied into doing tasks and jobs for one particular family member, and she was ridiculed and humiliated in front of his friends for their amusement. Sometimes this was in the form of making her do degrading things for them, or simply by belittling her in their company. Humiliating, verbal abuse was thrown at her for years. As you can imagine, Sarah's confidence and self-worth was utterly diminished, so she kept quiet. You may have witnessed this kind of behaviour in your schools, universities, and workplaces. Unfortunately, it can occur in these environments. However, that does not make it okay. Bullying in any form is an abusive act. If it's happening to you, you do not deserve it, however much you may be told that you do. Okay, we diverted. Let's get back to the story. Now you may be thinking, this is just a sad story. But wait, we have twists. Plot twists, character progression. But like in any good story, you're going to have to wait. Strangely, as awful as it was, Sarah accepted the abuse. She allowed herself to be treated this way because she simply didn't know any different. She believed that other families must behave in this way also. She had no frame of reference to know otherwise. It was only in her early to mid-teens when she started to stay over at school friends' houses that she began to witness other families in action. It was then she realised that perhaps her home life wasn't quite so normal, and that the gut instinct she'd had since she was 3 was right. This was not okay. This was not how she should be treated. And yet you guessed it, Sarah stayed quiet. Now you may be wondering why. Sarah, say something. Tell your mum, call the police, tell your friends. It took a long time for Sarah to understand exactly why she couldn't say anything, and why she never asked for help. Now she understands the following issues. She didn't want to cause any upset to her family. She certainly didn't want to be responsible for breaking up the family unit. It was all she knew. She was confused about what the abuse actually was, and thus felt embarrassed and ashamed. She didn't know how to communicate the experience because she didn't have the words. She was scared that speaking up would cause more violence. She didn't know whether anyone would even believe her. She believed that she didn't have any other adults around her that she could trust. She had been trained to keep secrets. This abuse created cycles in Sarah's life. She entered into a relationship with a man when she was 18 who mentally and physically abused her for 2 years, leaving her with a scar on her face that she still has today. She allowed it to happen. She believed that she deserved it, even though her gut told her again and again and again that it was wrong. Her gut was right. That instinct, that intuition is always right. Again, in this relationship, she told no one. She was embarrassed, humiliated, degraded. She eventually left, and then at the age of 30, she found herself in an environment in the workplace where she was again bullied, degraded, and humiliated by a group of people. Can you imagine how Sarah must have felt? She must have felt that she deserved it all. These things keep happening, so of course, in her mind, it must all be her fault. It was never her fault. abuse from a young age can cause cycles in people's lives. As it turns out, Sarah's abusers were abused themselves, and the violence they projected on her was merely a reflection of the anger and frustration that they themselves felt. Can you see now how, if Sarah had spoken out, those cycles would have been broken? The short-term consequences that she feared so much would have been temporary. Sarah has done a lot of self-work these last few years. It was not easy for her, but she worked through it. She imagined herself as a prey animal, a deer perhaps, being stalked at a lake by a lion, ripped apart as her blood seeps into the water. Yet as she did the self-work, she realised that she had not deserved the abuse. She became the lion. Not stalking prey, but walking tall and roaring with a new zest for life. She found her voice. She found her roar. She imagined herself as a mute jellyfish, weak and silent. It was only after the self-work that she crawled out of the ocean, bearing a shell and clasping her claws, playing on the sand in the sun, unafraid of the sharks. She decided to start living again and not simply exist in the regimented, sad, lonely world she had created for herself. It was time to regain her power, regain her self-worth, and take control in a positive way. After finally accepting and voicing the abuse, the healing process began. Today, Sarah has accepted what happened to her, and she refuses to let it affect her future anymore. If any of this has spoken to you, if you have recognized yourself in Sarah's story, do not be ashamed. It is not your fault. You do not deserve it. The beginning of self-work is never easy, but it is vital for you to be able to find your inner peace and live the happy life that you deserve. After some time, and with practice, the tools and techniques that Think Miracle provide will become a part of your everyday routine. You'll even begin to enjoy them as you learn to understand and honour your true self. Sarah is a survivor of abuse and is living proof that you can live a happy life and can have a strong and loving relationship with yourself and others after abuse. Most importantly, Sarah learned how to love herself again. If you have suffered abuse, sexual, violent, or mental, please remember, take back control. The abusers may have controlled you and had a huge impact on your past, but don't give them the power to ruin your future years of happiness. Don't keep the secrets any longer. Speak out and accept help now in order to save years of more abuse from others or yourself. Break the cycle now. Being abused does not make you any less of a person. Don't let the abuse define you. make you believe you are damaged or not good enough. You are a precious human being who deserves nothing but love, safety, and respect, just like everybody else does. Empower yourself. It was never your fault. I hope Sarah's story had all the elements you needed. Some happy bits, many sad bits, some scary and emotional parts. Sarah is a real person. So are you. Sarah deserves to be happy, free, and empowered. So do you. Speak out. Speak out. Speak out. This is your story. Make sure you live the life that you deserve. Please visit ThinkMiracle.org for more information on how to find your happiness.